All right, here we go. Today is June 27th. That's a Wednesday of 2018, and this is episode 220 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Good evening, Jerry. How are you, sir?
I am much better. I'm upright today, so that's awesome.
That's good. Were you not upright recently?
Not upright yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Well, you got knocked down and you got back up again.
That's right.
Well, that's good. That's good. And you know, we're almost kind of week to week, except we're a little delayed.
Yeah, that kind of happens sometimes. So just a reminder that the thoughts and opinions we express on the show are ours and do not represent those of our employers. And thank you again to our Patreon donors. You are amazing.
Absolutely. You guys are awesome.
So I guess we're like almost T+1 month from GDPR Day, and I actually have not heard of anybody dying as a result of.
I am stunned. I actually was thinking we'd have like a casualty count by now.
The body count is very low. I've not heard of anybody. So anyway, I keep looking.
You're telling me that our GDPR relief telethon with Jerry Lewis is being canceled?
I think it may delayed. I mean,
all right,
indefinitely delayed. Yes.
I can't keep, the Shriners small cycle guys on hold forever. At some point,
I know. We got to
cut them loose.
I get it. All right. So let's jump into some stories. And the first story, I'm before I read you the title, I'm just going to say, when Equifax had their big breach, I was thinking to myself, at least the bad guys didn't find out what religion I was and the names of my pets and how old my kids were.
That's true. Right.
However, that problem has been solved.
Yeah?
Yeah. So there's this company called Exactus. It's a marketing company, and apparently they very conveniently collected about 2 terabytes of various information, allegedly on about 340 million individuals, apparently all in the U.S., which includes things like your religion, the things that you like to do, whether they give the example of whether or not you like plus size clothes. So that's you pair that up with the Equifax data, and somebody, a bad guy or bad lady would know you better than you, I guess.
So the idea being I could go to this company and say, hey, tell me everybody in Georgia who's into plus size clothes and aviation, and they could spit out a report for me.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Targeted marketing.
That is, it's very helpful if you're a marketer.
Yeah.
It's not so helpful for everybody else.
Correct. So this apparently was, another one of those exposed NoSQL databases. And very interestingly, it was not found by Chris Vickery.
Slacker. What's going on there?
I know. So, I think I can only assume the person who found this one was like, hold my beer.
Hold my Red Bull vodka, probably. So, and since you're shrinking on your host duties or shirking on your host duties, this is a Wired article.
Oh, yes.
Marketing firms Exactus leaked a personal info database with 340 million records is the title.
Yeah, so apparently the researcher here, his name is Vinny Troya, I think is how you would pronounce his last name, found it by trolling Shodan, of all things.
Which is a common technique.
Yeah. Well, it basically says that he's probably not the first person to have found this. And apparently Wired, after he contacted Wired asked him to look up 10 people, and he found details about 6 of them. I don't know the detail. What was up with the other 4?
So what I was reading from this was that he was curious about finding openly accessible Elasticsearch databases.
Correct.
And so that's what he was searching for in Shodan, was just, hey, show me publicly accessible Elasticsearch, and quickly stumbled across this one.
Yep.
So just wide open, hanging out in the wind.
Yeah. I think he said that he found Shodan returned 7,000 hits for Elasticsearch. And one of them happened to be this thing. So, this seems to be like a sickness that is creeping across the IT industry of exposing databases. Now, there wasn't any. I didn't see in here any reference to where it was hosted at. If this was another AWS special or not. There's. I assume it was probably at some cloud provider, but there's no mention of that. But look, if you're the guardian of personal details of every citizen, or even, I'm going to say, even if half the citizens of a country are in your database, you probably need to think about protecting it a little more. Maybe a firewall would
well,
do, right?
I was thinking about, how does this happen and how does it keep happening? And I'm betting it's some sort of project, some sort of dev group or marketing group, or going, hey, we've got this idea and we want to try this new service or whatever. We need a copy of the database to play with for this new whatever. And it's all good intentioned. Mm-hmm. And then they go throw it out in some sort of public cloud and don't secure it properly, don't even know they're not securing it properly. And then the next thing you know, somebody else finds it.
Yeah.
And the problem is this, I was thinking about this, is how do you stop this? Unless you have just a really, really like overbearing IT security group, which impedes a whole lot of functionality and progress and productivity. This looks like one of those little pernicious problems that I think is going to keep happening, because you've got folks who are good intention and wanting, have a valid reason to play with this data, who don't understand the consequence of what they're doing. And before you know it, that data's out leaked publicly. And it's not like there's a blinky box you can buy to stop this either.
No, that's true.
It's not like you could find this by just scanning your own IP space from the outside or anything like that, because more than likely this is out in some random third party somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm really struggling with how you stop this, or at least, make it a little harder. I guess, have really tight controls on your production data is about the only thing I can come up with. And I don't know how viable that is for a lot of organizations.
I think you're right. I think we have a clash of philosophies here, right? I mean, because we're trying to think about the control set to help this from the lens of kind of traditional IT, but traditional IT, as we just talked about, doesn't extend, like it's fundamentally incompatible, right, with the way this stuff is happening, right? Because it's happening outside of your borders, unless you can somehow magically see that somebody is moving your data, out to some cloud provider, which, I mean, it's 2 terabytes. I'm going to guess they probably didn't upload that. Or, I mean, maybe they did, but...
Start the upload, go home for the weekend.
Yeah, I suppose that could be. But
I mean, how do you think I upload all the movies of your mom?
Oh, jeez, I knew you were going to go there.
So did she.
So, anyway...
It's been a while. Come on. It's been a while.
It has been a while since I've been disappointed in one of your jokes. Yep.
Yeah, your mom was not disappointed last. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop.
Oh, so
just,
I know. I get it.
So did she. Okay, stop. All right.
So
to that point though, I do know there's technology like, let's say you're running a web proxy and that's the only way to get out. I've seen some technology from a couple of companies that will scrape your web proxy logs for somebody engaging with a cloud service,
Right.
maybe that might kind of, sort of, maybe help.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know, but it still seems weak.
Ultimately, this is a people problem, right? And I think,
So ban them and let AI take over?
well, that is the end game, right? But we have, I think we have some time between now and when that can happen. So I'm thinking, a little smaller, that the teams who are want to do this, they need to understand the downsides. And I don't, I guess if there's something that security teams ought to be doing, it's raising awareness of, especially if they're in a position where something like this might happen. Like, I'm not a huge proponent of security training being a solution to, technical problems, but this seems like one where kind of raising awareness of some kind of basic hygiene stuff. If people are gonna go off and run science experiments on their own, like they got to know what they minimally should be doing. And now they can certainly choose not to do that. And hey, look, this company may have had that going great, and whoever did this just thumbed their nose at it and said, screw those IT guys. They're always getting in my way. It's that firewall is just oppressive. And, and so here we are. This is a large and growing problem, especially as more and more companies look, lots of companies are running around talking about how data is the natural resource of today, or in the near future. And so I think we're going to see a lot more companies aggregating, and I know this is kind of the antithesis of the GDPR, so it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But putting that to the side, you got a lot of companies, and I think a growing number, who are aggregating lots of data and needing to to do novel things with it. And that often says, well, we're going to move it to the cloud, or we're going to move it somewhere where maybe the kind of traditional IT stuff isn't in place.
Yeah, it's a tough problem. And by the way, going back to the story for a moment, it doesn't seem like there's been any real fallout or consequence to Exactus whatsoever. They didn't respond to any attempts for contact from Wired. As far as we know, there's no regulator involved. There's no, government probe involved. There's no fines. Just an oopsie.
I'm sure there, so I guess we probably ought to caveat this, because we did see last week a misfire around the Apple iPhone.
Yes.
So we did say misfire there. So I guess
for those who don't know, somebody came out and said they found a way around Apple's incorrect PIN code limitation.
Right.
And it turned out that there was some engineering challenges with their test.
Yeah. Yeah. They put the thermometer in the wrong place. It's a cold fusion joke for anybody who's been around for a while.
That's right. But all that being said, I like that people are testing and confirming that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my point was is it that they're not commenting because it didn't really happen, or they're not commenting because they're bad people, or it does say that they fixed the problem.
Right, that is true. Very quickly.
But I'm going to guess that when and if they do make a comment, it'll be, well, there's no evidence that this data has been improperly used.
Of course.
No evidence.
And it could very well be that their legal team and their marketing team and executives are huddling up to, figure out how to handle this. True. Often these stories come to press far quicker than a company can respond.
Absolutely true. That's very true. And I would say that in a normal circumstance, like everybody in the U.S. gets free credit monitoring, but I think the guidance here will be a little bit different. I'm going to guess they're going to ask you to go and change the names of your first pet.
And all your hobbies.
Right. Yes.
And exchange children with your next door neighbor.
I mean, you can't be too safe.
I think you're good at that point.
Right? Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, you should probably change your age too.
That happens naturally.
My guess. Anyway, so moving on to our next story. And so we've talked about this concept a couple of times, and this is it comes from the Tenable blog, and so you gotta weigh the marketing with the meat. But I thought it was worth talking about this. The title here is "Should You Still Prioritize Exploit Kit Vulnerabilities?" And there's a it's a company blog, so there's a lot of company rah Tenable. And by the way, I get nothing from Tenable. Anyway, so
for the record, me either.
Yeah, nobody does from us.
But I will also say, as company blogs go, I actually find value in Tenable's blog. Just unsolicited.
Yeah. I'm just
props.
Trying to make it clear that this wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
This wasn't prompted.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we this was purely because we read it and thought it had some interesting info. That's it.
Yeah. So we talked a show or two ago about some data related to vulnerability prioritization. And how the traditional way of prioritizing vulnerability remediation based on CVSS score is really not cutting the mustard because of just the sheer number of high and critical severity vulnerabilities, and the fact that many of them are not actually, many of the high severity vulnerabilities are not actually being exploited in the wild. And oh, by the way, some of the things that are being exploited in the wild show up lower down on the scale, like, in the mediums and lows. And so, the kind of to recap the whole concept there was our approach of using CVSS scores is really wrong-headed, and we're not using our resources most efficiently. And so the point of this particular story, and they go through a lot of kind of excruciating detail, which I thought is very interesting. And at the end, I'll just kind of go to the end first. The conclusion is that the prevalence of exploit kits as a threat to enterprises is on the decline, and they go through a couple of reasons why they think that is, and then some evidence of why they believe that's the case. One of the most interesting things was that today's exploit kits are primarily using vulnerabilities that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And so they basically kind of point out that on one hand, they're apparently still working, which is
right.
Not
because
great.
It's an immunity response, right? If it's working, I don't need to grow stronger.
Right. And then on the other, we're not seeing really up to date exploits. We're not, for instance, in the list they have here, there's nothing that is a 2018 CVE. So
I was very surprised by this conclusion. I did not expect this. I think exploit kits are a real easy way for a larger, more diverse group of less skilled threat actors to get into doing bad things. And it seems like that would be a growing market and continuing to evolve market. So I don't know. This was at war with what I thought was common sense, but their data is their data. I'm not questioning I think their conclusions make sense on the data they present. I'm just surprised.
So there is some amount of natural bias, and they actually point out a little bit of that bias. Like, the data that they are collecting is coming from their customers, and their customers are, by virtue of being their customers, are going to be, maybe at a different level of maturity than the average customer. I don't know if that's self-aggrandizing or what, but
Right, sure.
Point is that maybe if you look at if you were to segment companies up in a different way, you would come to a different conclusion. But one of the things they did point out is, and I have seen this, as a real thing. The move away from things like ransomware be as a threat to a workstation is, on the decline. But what's on the increase is mining, cryptocurrency mining, either drive-by mining or implanting some kind of miner on a system. But I want to make sure that that's distinct and different from the trend that we've been seeing of threat actors installing ransomware on infrastructure, like through OpenRDP sessions and stuff like that. That's that's a different beast. We've seen lots of city of Atlanta and a bunch of hospitals and whatnot. For the most part, those appear not to be the vector of entry for those is apparently not a workstation. So, anyways, pretty interesting stuff. Point is, the whole point is to keep trying to figure out what is the most effective way to prioritize, our limited amount of IT and IT security labor to go and address things, and so
with the understanding that may change over time and rapidly.
Absolutely. And by the way, they pointed out that exploit kits went through a decline previously, back when when Java fell out of vogue, and so they saw a big decline then, and then the exploit kit manufacturers, vendors, however you want to call them, they started attacking Microsoft Office tools and Firefox and other things like that.
Well, the malware industrial complex must continue on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess I would say it may be in decline, but I really don't expect exploit kits to go away, and I think they're worth keeping an eye on.
Absolutely.
And I also think knowing what's in exploit kits from a vulnerability standpoint that they're exploiting is good, because you definitely want to make sure the low-hanging fruit is at least nailed.
Correct. And by the way, you can still be on the decline, but that's not going to save your bacon if one of your employees falls for it, right?
Yeah, because we don't really have any sort of order of magnitude and any sort of context to say how much has declined really, if it's gone down 5% or 20%, but it's a huge order of magnitude to begin with, it's still a huge threat. Right.
And I think that we will see, especially with the I hate giving Microsoft so much credit, but they're doing a lot of good stuff with Windows 10. In terms of making it more difficult for actors to get a presence on workstations. Now, I don't think we should kid ourselves. This is an arms race, and they'll find a way, like Jurassic Park.
Well, we've always seen that, right? There's been cycles where the OS got pretty hard to attack for a while, so the bad guys shifted against going after applications, especially browsers were big for a while, and Office is big for a while, and still big, right? So there's plenty of attack surface. They're just going for whatever's most easily gone after these days.
Absolutely. So anyway, interesting stuff. I've been personally pretty interested in trying to think about kind of the higher order concept of better ways of prioritizing the stuff we all have to do in the area of security, and so that's why things like this just have a particular stickiness with me. So anyway, moving on to the next story, and I'll preface this with a question. So, what is the last thing you would expect to happen to a set of data after a nation state, raided a database? What's one of the last things that you would think it would happen?
It getting printed on fortune cookies.
Okay, the second to last thing. All right.
I think you're leading me to say it getting leaked to common everyday fraudsters.
Yes, that's right. So this one comes from HelpNet Security, and the title is Fraudster Exploited U.S. Government Staff Info Stolen in 2015 OPM Breach.
Now, to be fair, I read the show notes, so
Yeah, I know.
it's kind of I'm what they call a plant in the industry.
That's right. That's right. It's one of those
So
long-time
wait a minute.
podcaster things.
OPM breach.
Yeah.
That's 3 years ago, Jerry. Why do we care about the OPM breach now?
I know, right? So
And wait a darn minute. We already had our year of free credit monitoring expire. So that must mean the threat has passed.
it's impossible. So yes, we if you go back several years in time, we did talk about the OPM breach at length when it happened, and that it was because it was a government agency. There was quite a lot of public information about the breach, and it's one of those things that as time went on, our understanding got better, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And there were jokes about sanding off your fingerprints and lots of other silliness. But at the time, and really since, the breach has been attributed to the Chinese. And at the time,
all of them,
every single last one. That's right.
Wow.
I know they all had a hand in it.
That's communist hacking at its finest.
Well, I'm having this weird picture of the CSI cyber video with the two person keyboard. Like, imagine 1.5 billion people,
sure,
all with their hands on a keyboard.
It's a big
keyboard. Yeah.
Well, how else do you run the Great Firewall?
I don't know.
I'm completely taking off track. Go on.
All right. So
attributed to the Chinese.
Yeah. So it was attributed to the Chinese government as a intel collection opportunity. And, there was, in the aftermath, there was a lot of consternation about, oh my gosh, by kind of looking at let me take it one step back. For those who don't know, the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, is effectively the HR department of the U.S. government. Think of it that way, right? And
they process all sorts of things like security clearances.
Correct. So they effectively do the same. I mean, they do many of the same things that a normal company's HR department would do, like background checks. But in the case of the government, that extends to security clearances. And so, for example, one of the big consternations after the breach was, people who are who are undercover spies wouldn't appear in the set of data. And so, there was some concern that the average foreign government could basically look at the staff that's in the U.S. embassy and effectively tell which of them was a spy, just by comparing who's in the OPM set of data and who wasn't. So again, point was, all indications, all assertions were that this was the work of a nation state. But now, I have to kind of question. I think this story is causing a lot of questions in my mind. So there are now two people in the U.S. who have pled guilty. I guess it's not pled; it's pleaded. Right? I'm sorry. Don't email me. I know. I'm disappointed. I'm a disappointment. I get it. So anyway, two people pleaded guilty to using the data that was stolen through the OPM breach to commit financial fraud at the Langley Financial Credit Union by opening up loans.
And very, very basic financial fraud, like straight up typical identity theft,
Right.
small time stuff.
Opening loans, opening savings accounts, opening a loan, transferring the money into the savings account, clearing it out. Yeah, very, very like.
And they admitted they got the information from the OPM breach.
Correct.
But we don't know how. They didn't say how they got it yet.
Right. The government or the government has not yet indicated how this sequence of events came to be.
I bet they bought it on their dark web thing.
Oh, that's probably true. It all goes to the dark web. So
I hear you can get a quadruple scan on the dark web for your stuff.
Oh, you're killing me. So on the one hand, I'm part of me is thinking, and I'm having this Princess Bride moment, right? Where like, okay, if you were a nation state and you wanted to plant doubt, right, that it was a nation state that stole it, you could give some of the data to common criminals, which would then indicate that, maybe it wasn't from a nation state. But then they would know people like us would think that. And so I don't know what to think.
So I clearly cannot choose the breach in front of you.
Correct.
Or the attribution in front of
the attribution in front of us. Right. That's right. So anyway, it goes back to the long and tired trope that we've had on the show, which is attribution is super complicated, and I fear, by the way, that it is further complicated by political agenda.
Okay, so I've got a theory. The Chinese government got the data, printed it out, threw it in the dumpster, and then these common criminals went to China on vacation and went dumpster diving outside the government cybersecurity elite hacksaw offices, got the data, came back home, and then committed identity theft.
It's as reasonable a theory as any other. Right? I mean, maybe they were put into bottles and thrown into the ocean.
Do we know that these quote unquote common criminals are not actually elite spies for the Chinese?
We don't. I've never heard of them before. I've never seen the chairman of China in the same room as these people.
I think we should check the OPM breach data to see if their names are on it.
I'll get right on that. I'll go open my copy of the.
So this is crazy, though. Like, so in all realistic sense, to be serious for a moment, what this tells us is some of these data leaks have a very, very, very long tail.
Correct.
And, we were joking about earlier about the year of identity theft monitoring. Clearly, that's insufficient. I mean, in all honesty, that is insufficient because you never know when this data is going to resurface and be used.
Correct. And
how it's circulating.
Right. And by the way, I'm not entirely sure that it lessens the hassle, but it doesn't solve the hassle of having your credit stolen. So So if we're talking about the effectiveness of identity theft monitoring, it's low. I think you're much better off doing credit freezes and such. Though, what did they do here? They opened a bank account. Yeah, I'm not sure that they would have it.
Yeah, and loans. So loan might have been caught by credit freeze. It's.
But you know what? They would have again, credit freezes are run by the credit bureaus. Well, Equifax's information was all stolen, so I assume that they had access to all of that, and they probably maybe needed to figure out, what was, the name of someone's first pet, and that was why they had to break into Exactus.
Exactus was kind enough just to put it out there. They didn't have to break in at all.
Well, that's true. That's true. But anyway, to be able to get through to lift the credit freeze, if you have enough information, presumably a bad person could do that, right?
That's true. Unless you exchange your kid with your next door neighbor. I'm telling you, you need to do this.
Yeah. And change the name of your first pet. And the name of the street that you grew up in and the name of your first school.
I really feel like we're not providing any value on this podcast today.
No, I'm sorry. So.
It's late on a Wednesday. We're tired. Work's been rough.
Yes. So
Look,
anyhow, again, trying to get back on track. There were, I would say, in the past week, there were a bunch of little minor stories. There was a big flare up about the piece of software called FileZilla.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody who was on social media probably could not get away from that story, but FileZilla is a very common FTP graphical interface, and what struck me was the exchange that caused all the hoopla happened like in early January, and somebody like tripped over it recently. But basically, the FileZilla created a package that had extra software offers that when you install FileZilla, it would install other crapware. I guess it was optional, right? But basically there were security researchers kind of arguing with the maintainers of FileZilla, and the FileZilla people, I would boil it down to, didn't understand why this was so concerning, and so that was a big hoopla. Another one was, again,
well, let's keep in mind there's nothing else to be upset at right now in the world.
That's very true.
So,
that's very true. Well, we had the in the U.S. we had a little privacy win with the Supreme Court said that law enforcement agencies need a warrant to monitor location of cell phones. That was a win.
yeah, yep.
Not that I think it will materially change what actually happens, but at least they need a warrant, and I can feel better about that when I'm going to prison, I suppose. Let's see. We mentioned the PIN, like the Apple iPhone retry count. So most iPhones, if you have it set up normally, if you on your 10th failed login, it locks the phone, and it's basically a doorstop.
And could wipe it.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you got a couple options there. But yeah, the worst is, delete everything, which
Right.
I'm pretty sure is worse than a prison sentence to some kids today.
Being the parent of two teenagers, I can absolutely say that is true. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But in the U.S. at least, there's been a lot of discussion about the kind of the ongoing war between the Justice Department and Apple, and so this was kind of seen as oh my gosh, there's a giant gaping hole, but apparently not so much. Any other big stories you remember?
Oh yeah, all sorts of work stories I can't tell on the show.
Yeah, no. We all have those. It's one of the downsides of being in Blue Team. Like, if this were a Red Team podcast, we could talk about our conquests all day, because that would just help people want to hire us to.
That's true,
right? But we can't.
That's why I'm forced to talk about the conquest of your mom. It's the only conquest I can talk about.
Oh, jeez.
Come on, that was set up perfectly.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on any other big. I'm sure there's plenty of big ones out there, but
fine.
I am blanking.
Anyway, I guess we'll end the pain there. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you guys, as always. About the show, they can't all be winners, but we'll try harder next time.
That's right. By the way, I guess we can start talking about DerbyCon, right? So
I actually submitted a talk to DerbyCon. I'm waiting with fingers crossed to see if it gets accepted.
That would be awesome. I will.
I hope so. I've never spoken at DerbyCon, so that would be cool. If not, I still plan to go. I have a ticket, so
go ahead. Finish. Sorry.
If I do get accepted, we'll have to do something with my ticket.
Yeah, I was going to say I have 2 extra tickets that I think we will either give away or we will raffle for charity. So
wow,
I know. Well, so you and I will talk offline, and stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll have at least 2 and maybe 3.
When you say charity, you don't mean the main dancer down at the Claremont, do you?
No.
Okay. Just making sure.
I know it's good to clarify, but yeah. Anyway, that's all. It's not going to go any better from here on out. So thank you very much for listening, and we will talk again real soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye-bye. Bye.